Hey guys, Lopes here coming at you from Podcast Central. Just wanted to let you guys know that this week's podcast is going to be a little bit different. I did talk about this. If any of you did see my clip on Tuesday about the Super Bowl, I did kind of talk about this at the beginning of that. But just in case you hadn't seen that, I wanted to let you guys know once again. Again, this podcast is going to be a little bit different this week with all the NBA trade deadline stuff going on. The podcast is going to be focused mainly on that. And so if you've seen the title of this video, this is basically just a little bit of a compilation of a few of my favorite NBA trades that I like to talk about during the podcast. And I just wanted to kind of get you guys a little bit of a sneak peek of what this podcast is going to be like, at least for the most part. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. And if you want to see me do more stuff like this a little bit more often, feel free to let me know in the description below this video or any of the other videos that you guys have seen. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. First trade, this was, I think, definitely the most blockbuster trade of the week. We're jumping right in. The Brooklyn Nets traded James Harden and Paul Millsap to the Philadelphia 76ers for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 future first-round picks. One of those will be unprotected in 2022, so this upcoming draft, and a protected pick in 2027. I do not know what the protection on that pick is. But honestly, you know, it doesn't really matter at this point. It's just going to be protected some kind of way. And both teams are playoff teams, so, you know, my guess is neither team is going to end up being in the lottery, which is the highest amount of protection you can have is a lottery-protected pick. So it's not really going to matter if it's protected. I'm sure either team would get, you know, I'm sure that the Nets are going to be able to keep that pick the way it is. So this trade obviously came as a bit of a surprise to a lot of people, you know, at least for me. I didn't realize the situation had become this dire. As you guys may remember, if you saw the last podcast or one of my clips from last week, I went really in depth on James Harden. I went really in depth on what I thought the rest of the Nets season would look like, and a large portion of that was about James Harden and his down year and what I think he brings to the table for the Nets. I even predicted that the Nets will turn things around and end up winning the championship if they have been able to go through all of this mess and come out on the other side. Within, I think, 2 days of me recording that and putting that out there, it was already completely irrelevant. James Harden wanted out, then James Harden got traded. So it is what it is, you know. Obviously, I didn't know how dire the situation was at the time. It's funny to look back on it now. But, you know, it is what it is. I really thought that, you know, guys would be able to figure things out. But obviously, James Harden wanted out of there. And, you know, now we're here. And so the Nets and the 76ers are now, you know, they both get to move on from unideal circumstances. Obviously, the Nets with disgruntled James Harden, and obviously the 76ers with Ben Simmons, obviously sitting out this year due to quote-unquote mental health reasons, mostly just because he didn't want to play for them, honestly. So, you know, and this is a rare instance where, you know, 2 teams in the same division trade superstars. I know that divisions don't mean nearly as much in the NBA as they do in other sports because they go by, you know, their playoff bracket goes by conference, so you know, this year, it's highly possible that every team from the Atlantic Division, which is the Celtics, the Nets, the 76ers, the Knicks, the Raptors, like every single one of those teams will make the playoffs. It's possible that that would happen this year. It might not happen, but it is possible that every single one will make the playoffs. Obviously, in football, obviously in baseball, you don't have that. So obviously divisions don't mean as much in the NBA, but, you know, they do have to play each other 4 times a year, every year. So there's something to it, I guess. But again, you know, it just still doesn't happen very often. So my instant grades for this. Obviously, these grades will probably change over time. I will give grades that end up looking stupid, I'm sure. But here are my grades right now for the Brooklyn Nets. I'm going to give this a B. So I actually think that the Nets did pretty well in this trade. I think as as many issues as Ben Simmons has, he gives them a lot more of what the team needs than James Harden did at this point. The Nets already have KD, so they have, your primary scorer, your number one guy, your guy that can score from anywhere on the floor at any time, basically, literally, again, anytime he wants. And then Kyrie Irving, when he does play, obviously, he only plays about half the games, but, when he's on the court, you now have two dynamic scorers. So I think Ben Simmons gives them a lot more defense than what they had. They have a lot more ball facilitation than they had, although James Harden was leading the league in assists. But I think that, the way James Harden assists is a lot different than the way Ben Simmons, moves the ball and everything like that. Plus, Brooklyn desperately needed more front line help, like more front court help, and some more shooting around, your stars of KD and your stars of Kyrie Irving. And, they got both of those. They got Andre Drummond, who is an absolute glass cleaner and a good rim defender. You got Seth Curry, not Steph Curry, by the way, Seth Curry, his brother, who is not quite as good of a shooter as Steph is, but he's a fantastic shooter himself. And also they got 2 first-rounders out of the deal to take Ben Simmons and all those guys as well. And, the only reason I don't give them an A is because, obviously I think that the franchise wishes that it had worked out with James Harden, and there are so many what-ifs with this. I mean, they traded 8 first-round picks plus a few really good players for James Harden a year ago. So, on the back, now you just basically handed over 6 first-rounders? Like, that's not great, obviously. You definitely don't ever want to do that, especially with Brooklyn just having gotten all their first-round picks back from the Boston stuff a few years ago. So I think that they probably wish that it had worked out with Harden. So I just can't give them an A because, as much as Simmons and Drummond and Curry and the 2 first-rounders are great, I think that the Nets are really kicking themselves because they gave a lot of their future away for James Harden, and it was just a complete flop, I guess. I mean, you can't really say anything other than that. I mean, he was on the team for a year, and then he left. So, definitely not a risk that ended up working out for them. But, again, in terms of this trade, pretty good, so I'm still going to give it a B. For the 76ers, I'm going to give it a C-. Honestly, maybe even a D+. I'm kind of back and forth on that. I just don't like this trade for them, honestly. I don't think it makes much sense basketball-wise. I don't think it makes much sense morale-wise, although Ben Simmons was pretty bad for your morale, so maybe it does make a little bit of sense morale-wise and team chemistry-wise, but, obviously their record doesn't really scream to me that they're having a lot of chemistry issues as a team. There are guys there that are really developing. I was a huge fan of Tyrese Maxey coming out of the draft. He's really played well this year. So, I don't really see why they felt the need to bring in James Harden, especially with the way that Joel Embiid is playing. James Harden has had a difficult time not being the alpha throughout his career. He's always wanted to be the alpha, and if he goes to the Sixers, which obviously I don't know why I said if, he is going to the Sixers, he's going to have to learn to make Joel Embiid the alpha. Joel Embiid is the alpha of that team, even if James Harden is there. And James Harden's going to have to live with it. And, for the Sixers, again, Harden's making $44 million this year, although they're not going to have to pay all of that. And he's already opted into his $47 million option for next year. He's 30. He's starting to deal with injuries for the first time, really, in his career. And that's obviously never really a good sign for an athlete. His stats are going down, as we talked about last week. And plus, they gave up 2 first-round picks when they were originally asking for a lot of first-round picks for Ben Simmons. So they ended up going from asking for first-rounders to giving them up. And then obviously losing a guy who, I don't know why he keeps getting traded. I know he's not that great on defense, but Seth Curry really does a lot for your offense. He just does. Like, that's just what he does. He comes out there, he stretches the floor, and he stretches out the defense. Like, that's just what he does. And obviously Andre Drummond's a pretty decent big as well. And they just gave up a lot to get a guy that I'm not sure how much he fits with this team. So I don't think it's a great trade for them, but of course we will see as time goes along. And the last minute trade that came through at 2:59 p.m. The trade deadline is at 3, and this trade came through at 2:59 according to ESPN. This was the last major trade that the Celtics made that I'll be talking about. It was trading Dennis Schroeder, Bruno Fernando, and Enes Freedom to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Daniel Theis. I put this one last, and I don't know why I put this one last, because this was just my least favorite trade of the whole thing. Okay. Oh boy. Okay, Daniel Theis. So guys, for those of you who don't know, Daniel Theis has been a source of pain. Genuine, unbridled pain for Celtics fans for the last few years. Now, to be clear, none of this is Daniel Theis's fault as a human, okay? None of this, I don't blame Daniel Theis for any of this, okay? He's more of a symbol. You know how in wrestling, you know, there might be a guy who you're supposed to like according to the program, but everybody boos them anyway because they don't like how the company is using them and they think that they should be using somebody else. Whatever the case may be, it's kind of like that. Like, Daniel Theis is kind of a symbol for me of Celtics incoherence at times with things. Like, that's basically what Daniel Theis has been for 2 years. It drove me and my other Celtics fan friends nuts when Daniel Theis was getting 30 minutes a night. I mean, it was driving us nuts, and then they traded him away. They traded him away, and Robert Williams, who we drafted in the first round at center, uber athlete, really great potential, finally got to play. I'm not kidding. Like, when we drafted him, a lot of my friends thought this guy's going to be our starting center. He can jump out of the gym. He gives us something that we desperately need, which is an alley-oop threat, a guy that can rebound, a guy that can just go up there and be physical, and a guy who's a rim protector who, spoiler alert, Daniel Theis is not. He's not a great rim protector. Like, we just needed that. But I'm going to have a stroke. Because the Celtics were so in love with Daniel Theis, who they got just from overseas. Like, it's not like they even drafted him or anything. They just got him as a free agent. Like, they were so in love with Daniel Theis that they started him, and Robert Williams never got to play for years. And it would drive me nuts. I would show videos to my father and be like, look at this guy. How good is he? Look at this cool thing he did. This guy meaning Robert Williams. And like, look at him. How great is he? And my dad's like, why doesn't he play? And I'm like, because the Celtics are playing Daniel Theis. And he's terrible. It's driving me nuts. Like, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to calm down a second. This I don't know why I saved this for last. But, you know, okay. I'm going to try to be objective here. Sorry about that. Sorry about the rant. Okay. I'm good. So, Dennis Schroeder simply wasn't going to be a fit. And he wasn't going to fit in Boston, or at least not nearly as well as Derek White is going to. They needed to trade him to, again, get under the luxury tax threshold. Fernando and Freedom were just throw-ins to help with a little more salary. And Daniel Theis, look, when they traded him away, Robert Williams finally got to play. Robert Williams played really, really well, as we all knew he would. If you were a Celtics fan, we all knew he would. And now he's got a nice contract. He's averaging almost a double-double this year.
every game that we watch, he has some crazy alley-oop highlight or block highlight. I mean, I just watched the game on Sunday against the, who was it? Atlanta Hawks, I believe. It was against the Hawks. And he just had some blocks and alley-oops that you just look at, and you're just like, how does he does it all the time. How does he do that? Like, it's crazy. And now the Celtics trade for Daniel Tice again, and it gives me flashbacks that I don't like, but he's not the worst player in the world. He's not. He really, really isn't. I think the worst thing is his contract, $8 million for the next 3 or 4 years. It's something like that. So it's a lot of money for him, especially since he's going to be your third string center, essentially. Because, with Al Horford and Rob Williams, obviously, he's going to be your third string center. Obviously, Horford and Robert Williams start together. Although if it was up to me, I would start Grant Williams, but that's just me. But let's look at it this way. So if the Celtics picked up Al Horford's contract and his option next year, it will be about $26 million, I believe, is the option for him for next year. The Celtics, if they do that, will be paying $45 million to just their centers next year, which is just too much, considering, again, all the other contracts that we talked about that were on the team. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, like all these guys, Derek White now, like all these 10 plus, 20 plus, $30 million contracts that you have. I don't think that they're going to pick up Al Horford's contract, but, if you don't, then I guess bringing Tyson is a better call because at least you have some kind of a good backup for Robert Williams. But, anyways, I think the situation with Tice is a couple years ago, he was like the personification of one of Celtics fans' like biggest frustration, which is why is Robert Williams not playing more? Like, he's so good, please play him. And Daniel Tice was like it was like no, the Celtics won't play our lottery bound center that should have gone top 10 in the draft but fell because of injuries. And the reason why we're not playing him is because Daniel Tice is the greatest center in the world. Like that kind of felt like what was going on, even though, again, none of this is Daniel Tice's fault. He earned those minutes. He practiced hard. He played hard. He did his job. Like, he earned those minutes. None of this is to say that this is Daniel Tice's fault. It just, he was an idea. He was the personification of it. Does that kind of, I don't know if that makes sense, but him coming back now, the worst part about it was that he wouldn't, he played 30 minutes a night, and that was the crux of it, is we didn't want him to play that much. But now, if he's coming in and he's just going to be a backup, he's going to play 10 or 12 minutes a night, spell Al Horford, spell Rob Williams when they need to sit for a little while and rest, or, God forbid, if one of them gets injured, Daniel Tice is a perfectly capable backup, and you're not going to lose that much on the defensive end. Like, if that's what's going on here, then I think that's honestly not that bad. It's not great, but it's not that bad. Clearing the clutter at the center position makes sense. I mentioned it in the last video or a couple of videos ago, whatever it was, when it pertained to Bol. Like, it was hard for me to see if he was going to get any playing time because I think the Celtics had 5 centers on their roster. So they were able to clear a lot of that clutter here. And Daniel Tice is familiar with the system. He's familiar with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. He's familiar with Robert Williams, Al Horford. He's familiar with all of those guys. So he's familiar with the system. So he'll be able to kind of pick up where he left off, at least presumably. I can see why Brad Stevens made this trade to get a guy that you can rely on because you had him in the past. But you couldn't get anything better? Because, I mean, the package that you gave up was pretty significant. I mean, you know, Dennis Schroeder, Bruno Fernando, Ennis Freedom, like that's not a small package. Like Dennis Schroeder was averaging 15 points a night. He's not a slouch. And he's a good defender too. Like he was not somebody that was just kind of a throw-in. Like he's a good player still. So, I don't know. It just seems strange to me. But my grades. I have to give grades. Okay. A D. I can't bring myself to give it a better grade. Again, I understand why they did it. I'm biased. I admit it. I'm sorry. I am. I can't bring myself to do it. When I saw this trade, like when I saw the Derek White trade, I was like, okay, Dennis Schroeder's gone. They're trading him. We're just gonna have to see what they get back for him. And when I saw that it was just Daniel Tice, no draft picks, no cash considerations, no additional players, it was just Daniel Tice, I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't give it a better grade than a D. It's gonna work out better than the D grade that I'm giving it. I just can't do it. And my other Celtics fans that may watch this that have followed it and know what they'll understand, I'm sure. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's just everything that happened was too fresh for me right now. So I'm giving it a D. For the Rockets now, moving on to the Rockets, I'm going to give it a B minus. The reason is Dennis Schroeder's likely to be bought out. So, you're not getting Dennis Schroeder out of it. So, at that point, it's Daniel Tice for Bruno Fernando and Ennis Freedom, who, by the way, Ennis Freedom was also waived. So now you're just trading Daniel Tice for Bruno Fernando. So at that point, again, we've said this a bunch of times, salary dump. It was a salary dump. So it did the job of a salary dump. So I'm giving it a B minus. Obviously, I could give it a B like I did with the other salary dump trade for the Celtics, but like you had Dennis Schroeder, you could probably use him a little bit, at least as a mentorship role for your young guys, and you're not going to do it. Like, you're not really getting anything out of it, I guess. You're not getting any draft picks out of it, so it's not quite a B. I'm going to give it a B minus. It was, it did the job, but it wasn't very remarkable. So it gets a slightly above average grade for me of a B minus.
Hey guys, me again. Thank you so much for watching one of my clips from the Lopes Goes Last podcast. These clips are so much fun to do. I absolutely love making them and I absolutely love doing them. And this podcast is my baby. So I really want this thing to grow and I really want it to succeed. So if you did like what you see, please subscribe. Also hit that bell notification so you never miss any one of my episodes or one of my clips like this one. And please do also like and share these videos with your friends and your family so that we can make this thing grow as fast as possible. And I wanted to thank you again so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day.